The Houston Texans are still in the state of Ohio after a weekend celebrating Andre Johnson going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The Texans are in Cleveland for 3 practices ahead of their second preseason game, and I've joined them. The Texans will practice 3 times this week here in Cleveland before they head to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers for their second preseason game on Friday. The land, the Forest City, named after General Moses Cleveland, founded in 1796, incorporated in 1836. You're not here for Cleveland facts. You're here for a roster projection, a 53-man roster for the Texans with a ton of training camp in the preseason already behind them. Look, the Texans have 21 practices and 4 preseason games for the preseason. And one of those practices is a joint practice. So they have 20 regular practices, which they've already done 10 of those. They've got 4 preseason games, which they've already done 1 of those. So you're a half of the way there in practices. You're a quarter of the way there in preseason games. It's time to start figuring out who is going to be who on this roster and start separating the wheat from the chaff, as the farmers would say. So let's put together a 53-man roster here with 10 practices and a preseason game under the Texans' belts. And there's still a little bit of projecting to go on. Look, 10 practices, a joint practice, and 3 preseason games. Plenty of time for this to massively change. Plenty of time for players to rocket up the depth chart or fall down. Plus, unfortunately, injuries pop up, things of that nature make it easier to make decisions at certain spots. You'll see that here in just a few moments as we pull up the roster. So let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at this Texans roster. We'll color code it as we go along. Battle Red's going to be starters. H-Town Blue's going to be backups. And purple are going to be players that we hope the Texans are able to keep on the practice squad, or at least should be interested in getting on the practice squad. So the starter conversation is easy. We'll go position by position on this, but Laramie Tunsil, we know he's going to be the starting left tackle. We know Titus Howard's going to be the starting right tackle. And Shaq Mason is the starting right guard. And I believe Juice Scruggs is going to be the starting center. He's been the starting center for last preseason. He was going to be the starting center for the season before the injury. And then when he came back, they needed him at left guard. So we know those 4. And if the Houston Texans had to play a football game in the regular season this week, I believe they would start Kenyon Green at left guard. So there's your starting offensive line for the Texans, as Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, and Titus Howard, left to right tackle, make up that starting Texans offensive line. Now, I'm going to try to find us 5 backups here for the Texans. 10 offensive linemen. It's not crazy to keep that many when you think about the fact the Texans ran through so many offensive linemen due to injury last year. So keeping 10, I mean, it would be a sound decision to make sure there are double-digit options when it comes to offensive linemen. Well, this one's going to be pretty easy for me. We know Jarrett Patterson has a great shot to be the backup center for this team, and we know Blake Fisher is going to be on this team. He's a second-round pick for the Texans. So now we're up to 7 offensive linemen. We got to go out there and find some versatility, guys that can do a little bit of everything when it comes to the offensive line. And when I think about versatility on this team, I think about Kendrick Green. He could play both guard spots and as a center option for this team as well. So right away here with 8 offensive linemen, the Texans have their swing tackle in Blake Fisher. They've got their backup center in Jarrett Patterson, and they got their backup center in Kendrick Green. So 8 players. We need 2 more. And if you've heard me talk about him and you've seen him here in the preseason, and he's played right tackle when he's really only played guard so far in the NFL, Nick Broker, I believe, is going to make this team. Inside, outside versatility, can play guard, can play tackle. And now with 9 offensive linemen, I feel like you probably can go ahead and just kind of throw a dart and find the last guy. Cam Irving, who they just added, is intriguing. I'll go ahead and say that Charlie Heck makes it as that backup tackle behind Blake Fisher, so the backup swing tackle. So I'll go ahead and say that 10 offensive linemen, super important position after all the injuries last year. Not as fun to discuss as some of the other ones. And so by virtue of that, let's get into a very difficult conversation, and that's the wide receiver room. We know Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stefon Diggs are essentially the starters. And I would tell you that if I was going 1 through 4, those are the top 3, and then number 4 is Noah Brown. So Noah Brown was fantastic a couple of times last year. He actually was, I think, 6th in the league in yards per reception when you factor in what he was able to do. Now, he didn't qualify like some of the other guys because of the targets and the amount of time that he missed due to injury. But if you took his yards per reception and, kind of cut off on guys that had a medium level of production, he'd be up there with some of the best from last season. So Noah Brown, to me, is going to be on this team. Now we got to find 2 more wide receivers, and it's a difficult conversation to come up to because there are worthwhile candidates. And look, I know I've talked about how I believe this guy's ahead of that guy. There's a lot of guys that are worthwhile candidates to be the 5th and 6th wide receiver for this Texans team. John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods, Steven Sims, Ben Skoranek, they all have a valid argument. So when I figure out who I think is going to be on the 53 and I make this prediction, no, it's very close. Like it's razor thin. Like they all have a valid argument. I'm going to go ahead and put Ben Skoranek on here because of the usefulness on special teams. He's had a couple of nice moments catching the football, but he plays a lot of special teams. And if somebody else makes this roster that's maybe not as good on special teams, or maybe, just doesn't have the experience on special teams, Skoranek making the team helps them out. You saw the connection with Davis Mills in the preseason game. He looked pretty darn good in the preseason game. I know he had a holding call and that weird Mills miscommunication drop thing, but he had the catch behind his back. He went up and skied for one on the big Mills play. So I like Ben Skoranek, and I like Xavier Hutchinson as well. Hutchinson has done more in training camp, and we saw what he did in the preseason game than these other wide receivers. Now, he doesn't have as much special teams experience or usefulness like, say, a Robert Woods or a Steven Sims, but because you kept Skoranek, you're able to keep a guy like Xavier Hutchinson. Again, you may not need to rotate these guys in that much if you stay healthy at wide receiver. You may not need that much Xavier Hutchinson or Ben Skoranek, but it would be good to have a guy like Hutchinson and have, obviously, Skoranek, who's useful outside of the wide receiver room. It'd be good to have a guy like Hutchinson, which means it'd be a very tough situation that I have John Mechie on this team. Former second-round pick, coming off the ACL. He dealt with the cancer, worked back from it last year, was on the team last year. Didn't have a ton of success or consistency and just didn't have a ton of opportunities to showcase that. He said he feels better. The body feels better. He just hasn't looked as good as some of the other guys here. But I would say that there are very much 2 practice squad hopefuls in this conversation, Mechie and Sims. Now, I believe they both could easily sign with other teams. Sims with the special teams usefulness, and Mechie just a team betting on that potential as a former second-round pick finally paying off. But I would try to keep those 2. Of course, they don't count in our accounting here for the 53-man roster, but practice squad hopeful, certainly. I'll go ahead and name the fullback. I believe it's going to be Andrew Beck. I know he's missed up to this point, but he's got more experience. He knows the offense more. Troy Hairston got hurt last year, didn't play all last year, so Andrew Beck is going to be the fullback for this team for me. We need the starter at running back. We know how that one's going to go. Uh-oh, I messed up my labels here. Here we go. We know it's going to be Joe Mixon, but we need a backup. It's going to be Damian Pierce and Dare Ogunbowale, and then one spot for a fight between Jawar Jordan and British Brooks and J.J. Taylor and Cam Akers. And you can't keep all of them, and you probably can't practice squad all of them. So it's a very difficult conversation to figure out who the running back is and figure out who you're going to keep and who you're going to try to put on the practice squad and who you hope doesn't end up on somebody else's team because you couldn't get them on the practice squad. I'm going to go with the draft capital investment and the chance that you could get one of these other guys to end up on the practice squad. So I'm going to go with Jawar Jordan. And I know the draft capital investment's not some massive draft capital investment, but it is an investment nonetheless in Jawar Jordan. And he's played pretty well. We didn't get to see him a ton in the preseason game because a quarter plus of the game got canceled. And I feel like the Texans maybe had the idea of using both the rookies almost exclusively in the second half to kind of give them a half. So I'm going to go with Jawar Jordan as the backup. And then you got a couple of practice squad hopefuls here in Cam Akers and British Brooks. You'd love to get British Brooks and Cam Akers on the practice squad, have them hanging around. And I know it sounds crazy to put Gerard Jordan on there over Cam Akers, but Akers late arriving, doesn't know things as well as Gerard Jordan at this point, I would guess. And Akers, he was out there for a reason. And if he got back out there, I don't know that a couple of plays in the preseason all of a sudden makes him a super attractive player to somebody else that you would snatch up real quick. Now, we know how this one's going to go. This is obviously Case Keenum as the starter, and I believe Davis Mills is the backup. Now, this is where it gets interesting here at quarterback. You keeping 2 or you keeping 3? The rules have changed so that it is easy to promote that practice squad quarterback as the emergency quarterback. Okay, you would need an emergency quarterback only if the starter and the backup got hurt in the game, and you can designate that player before the game. That's where I feel like the Texans may go. It's easy to get that emergency player on the field, and I know DeMeco Ryans was on the 49ers when the emergency quarterback situation was not available to them, and it might have cost them a chance to play in a Super Bowl. I get that. But it just from a roster standpoint, being able to keep another player that's just a little bit useful. And CJ Stroud was really durable last year. I understand that he missed a portion of a game because of the concussion, and then he missed a couple of weeks after that. But I mean, he played through a shoulder injury. He was dinged here or there, but he's a pretty darn durable player. So I'm going to go with practice squad hopeful on this. I'm going to throw Case Keenum on the practice squad, and that's going to be my emergency quarterback that you can promote for game days. He only plays if the first 2 guys get hurt. The Texans are not done with Case Keenum's mind. Physically, he may not be where Davis Mills is right now, but Keenum still serves a usefulness to the quarterback room and to the Houston Texans, even if he's not officially on the 53-man roster. And then we know how the tight end situation shakes out. There's your starter, and there's your backup. And we know Cade Stover's on there. I would try to practice squad Tegan Quintiriano, depending on how bad the injury is, if he doesn't have to go on some sort of injured list. And I'd try to get him on the practice squad. I mean, this is a guy that has showcased a little bit of potential. He just can't stay healthy. It'd be nice to have him around the organization if you could go and make sure that he gets on the practice squad. So the way we've shook things out so far, we've got 2 quarterbacks on the roster and a practice squad hopeful. We've got 4 running backs on the roster and a practice squad hopeful. We've got a fullback on the roster. We've got 6 wide receivers, 2 practice squad hopefuls, 3 tight ends, and a practice squad hopeful, and then 10 offensive linemen, 5 starters and 5 backups. Let's flip it over to the defense. DraftKits.co, promo code CODY24 for 10% off your entire order. You get the jumbo, beautiful, customized draft boards, taking your draft to the whole next level. And it's reusable year after year. You got the removable labels, those big, beautiful labels, players' faces on them, all the information. So nobody's having a hard time shuffling through the labels when you're sticking and picking at the home draft. Take the home draft to the next level. Get 10% off my code CODY24. They can put the loser from last year in an embarrassing photo as the background. Maybe you're the champ and you want to be the king on the background with a nice crown. It's such an easy process to add your artwork to the custom draft boards. They've even got draft boards ready to ship to you right away. If you don't want to do the custom ones, you can still get the giant ones, and you still get 10% off your entire order when you use the promo code CODY24. DraftKits.co, DraftKits.co. Don't forget about them. Okay, we got to go and find us 24 defensive players because we've got 26 offensive players. We know there's 3 specialists on the team, so we got to find 24 defensive players for the Houston Texans. There's not as many tough cuts on defense. It's just kind of figuring out how you want to align the roster allocation over on defense. And I'm using a lot of what they did the previous year, but they may have learned from that or changed that approach. But I'm going to lean a little bit more towards what they did a year ago in trying to figure out who they're keeping on defense. But let's get into it. The same color code applies. Starter is red, backup is blue, and then the practice squad hopeful. You'll notice Danico Autry is on here. Let's put an asterisk next to his name, because he is going to be suspended. And let's put an asterisk next to Dylan Horton's name because he doesn't count against the roster right now because he is on the non-football illness list. So they're not going to be in Battle Red or H-Town Blue in this exercise, but those two players would eventually be on the roster, you would think. Obviously, Autry after the suspension and Horton when he gets healthy. So let's dive right into the defensive ends, and we know that Will Anderson and we know that Danielle Hunter are going to be the starters for this team. Now, Danico Autry is going to be the key backup for this team, but again, he's suspended because of the PED violation, so he's not going to be playing. So that gives somebody else an opportunity to make this roster, and that is probably going to go to Jerry Hughes. And Derek Barnett, I feel like he's the number 3 defensive end with Autry down, so Barnett moves up a little bit on the depth chart. And then the veteran, Jerry Hughes, they paid him a little bit to get back in the fold here, and he showcased quite a bit in training camp. And look, you got to think about what Hughes is going to be here. He's going to be situational. You're not going to put him out there a whole heck of a lot, but if you let Jerry Hughes go out there and just unleash hell for a few snaps a game, you can get something out of Jerry Hughes. That gives the Texans 4 defensive ends, and then something to think about when Danico Autry is healthy, or excuse me, when Danico Autry returns from his suspension or Dylan Horton is healthy. So those are your defensive ends. Let's jump over to their buddies on the defensive tackle room. We know that Foley Fatukasi is going to be a starter. He and Mario Edwards have just been dominating people. I mean, just absolutely kicking tail in training camp. They've been very good, and that is the starting duo. And you'll see them quite a bit because Edwards has showcased some pass rush prowess, and Fatukasi has just been a wall at different times in stopping the run game. So they've been a nice pair. We got to find a couple of backups for them. That's right. I said a couple of backups. Only 8 defensive linemen for this team. And because you've allocated this or that elsewhere, you only get 8 defensive linemen. And I'm going off of kind of how they operated a year ago, and they only kept around 8 defensive linemen for most of the year. So who's that other guy on the defensive line that's going to jump out? I think it's going to be Tim Settle. Hasn't done a ton recently, but that is a guy that I feel like they trust. They brought him over from Buffalo as a free agent. And then I'm going to go with Khalil Davis as the other player there. So that gives you 8 defensive linemen, 4 ends, and 4 tackles. And I know with the injuries that popped up last year and the claiming of, guys like Derek Barnett late in the year, Majai Sanders from Arizona, they just needed different bodies there. You're going to get your reinforcements with Danico Autry and hopefully at some point Dylan Horton. And if you do some interesting additions on the practice squad, you might have some guys in the building that got a little something to them. So I'd try to keep Ollie Gay around on the practice squad. I'd try to keep Marcus Harris around on the practice squad. I'd try to keep McTelvin Agam on the practice squad, and then either Fisher or Bird. I'll go with Fisher just because he's played professional football, even though it wasn't in the NFL, and he showcased a little bit. So I'll go with those guys as practice squad hopefuls for this team. When you start thinking about building out that practice squad and putting that together. So you got 8 defensive linemen, a few practice squad options. Let's go through some cornerbacks. How about that? We know that Derek Stingley is going to be one of the starters, and Kamari Lassiter has played good enough to be the other starter. So he's on the roster as well. So those are your 2 starters, and we'll go through the backups here. Desmond King, your slot guy. I call it a backup. It kind of should be a starting spot there at corner, but I'm assuming King has done enough to make sure that they're going to put him on this roster and that they won't, maybe just put Jalen Petrie there and then do something else with Desmond King's roster spot. I don't know if they're that quite there yet with Jalen Petrie, walking down from that safety spot to defend slot receivers and things of that nature. So Desmond King, I'm going to put him as the backup. I'm going to put Jeff Okudah as the backup. Okuda's played decently in training camp, had a rough start the first few days, but it kind of got his legs under him and got some things together. So I put Okudah on there as the backup outside. Desmond King is your inside guy, so he's kind of a backup, but he also plays a little special teams for you as well. And I'm going to try to keep one more corner if I'm the Texans. I just don't know exactly who it's going to be. You've got some other players on here that are special teams aces, so maybe you're not keeping a guy like Mike Ford, Miles Bryant's ability to play inside and do some return stuff for you, and actually played pretty well in that preseason game. Saw him dart in from the cornerback spot and make a little, start a tackle for a loss for the team. I'm going to go with the Mighty Mouse here, Miles Bryant, one of the smaller players on the team. I'll put him on there as a backup player, giving us 5 cornerbacks for this team. Now, the safety spot, this one's pretty elementary. You know about Jimmy Ward and you know about Jalen Petrie, and your backups are going to be Eric Murray, who can play a little bit of special teams, but he's your primary kind of third starter at safety. MJ Stewart, who can play a lot of special teams. And then Kalen Bullock. We saw what Bullock did, the rookie from USC, the third-round pick. He forced the fumble in the preseason game. Maybe could have got the ball if he hadn't been celebrating. That's a whole nother conversation for another time. I actually think he'd been in the first pile trying to get the ball, and he still wouldn't have got it because that ball just, did what footballs do sometimes and scored it away. But there's your 5 safeties, really not that difficult to kind of pick that thing out. Lonnie Johnson, Brandon Hill, unfortunately, they're on the outside looking in. If they had less special teams usefulness elsewhere on the roster, maybe Lonnie Johnson has a chance, but I don't see it for him right now. And then your starters at linebacker will go Azeez Al-Shire and Christian Harris. And then I really think they only kind of start 2 linebackers. I mean, I know that eventually if they go out there in base defense, they'll have 3 linebackers on the field. And so I suppose that third starter would be Henry To'o, but I basically would call To'o a backup here. And then this is where they're going to get some of their special teams usefulness. Jake Hansen's had a really nice camp. I mean, it's been almost to the same level of Blake Cashman, it feels like to me. Cashman started getting things going. The pads came on. He did even more. Hansen has forced some fumbles, had some pass breakups. He got dinged up in the preseason game, so I hope he's okay and he'll be able to practice in Cleveland this week. But I'd put Hansen on there, and this is a great story. It's an undrafted free agent linebacker who stuck around when Lovie Smith was the coach, stuck around again last year, and then has fought and played really well and earned a spot here and an opportunity to be on this team at this point. So there's Hansen for you. Neville Hewitt, special teams ace for this team, and just a really good special teams player, and has played well at the linebacker spot in training camp as well. So I'm putting him on the team. And this is where it gets tough. If you don't keep Delshon Phillips, you cost yourself a couple $1 million. You invested a draft pick in Jamal Hill. Jacob Phillips has been out there and had a couple of really nice moments for this team. So it gets very, very difficult to find out who that 6th linebacker is going to be. Right now, I'm going to tell you it's Delshon Phillips. And that means that a draft pick in Jamal Hill, I mean, you're certainly going to immediately try to get him on the practice squad. That's a practice squad hopeful for you for sure. But I just feel like the 3 guys in blue at linebacker have done more than Jamal Hill to this point. It's not some sort of top 4 round investment that you have in Jamal Hill. It's a late round pick. And you just try to get him on the practice squad and have him hang around because he knows how you operate. He knows the system. And if you need him, because a Hansen or a Phillips or a Hewitt or a Christian Harris or To'o gets hurt, you've got him right there to elevate from that practice squad. And look, I got a soft spot in my heart for this guy. I try to get Max Tooley on the practice squad as well. I think there's something there. I really do. And I'll be ready to give up when it's time to give up there. I really think there's something there with Tooley. So we found our 24 defensive players. We got 8 defensive linemen. We've got 6 linebackers, and then we've got 5 cornerbacks, and we've got 5 safeties. So there's our 24 defenders. We have 26 offensive players. That gives us 50. And then we know about these 3 over here that are all starters on these special teams. Kaimi Fairbairn's your kicker. Tommy Townsend is your punter. And John Weeks, the longest tenured Texan, is your long snapper. So that's the 53-man roster projection at this point. Double check my math to make sure I got it right. But I'm pretty sure as I look over it, we've got 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 1 fullback, 6 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, 10 offensive linemen, 8 defensive linemen, 6 linebackers, 5 safeties, 5 corners, 3 specialists. And within that group, I would tell you for the starting spots on special teams that you've got Desmond King as a potential kickoff returner, punt returner. You've got Damian Pierce as a potential kickoff returner. You've got a lot less from a punt return standpoint, but maybe you want to put Tank Dell out there. Maybe you want to try Miles Bryant back there. He made the team in this roster projection. So you've got some options there, not as strong from the return game, but you've put together a good amount of coverage players that can go out there and make plays and continue to be one of the better special teams units like the Texans have been for a couple of years under Frank Ross. So what say you for this roster projection? That a good enough roster projection for you? Did I miss? Should I have put somebody else on? Did I miss a practice squad player? And again, double check my math, but I think I got this one right here. And if you want more Cleveland facts, let me know in the comment section down below. All the comments, we love to hear from you on the video. Throw me a thumbs up on the video when you head down to this comment section as well, and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already subscribed to this channel. And don't forget to visit our friends at draftkits.co. Draftkits.co. Take your home draft, take your long-time fantasy league to the next level. The beautiful, custom, reusable draft boards. It doesn't get any better than draftkits.co. And my code Cody, CODY24, CODY24 is going to get you 10% off your entire order, man. They just do such a great job over at draftkits.co. You do not want to miss out on the opportunity to get that wonderful custom-made draft board for your league, reusable year after year after year. And hey, maybe you don't need a reusable one every year because you can't get everybody to pitch in for it. They got the easy one-off years for you. You can get a big, nice draft board, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg like some of these other places, and it is primo quality. They do a great job sending you the year-to-year draft boards as well. Draft Kits has you covered. Draftkits.co. Draftkits.co. CODY24 for 10% off your entire purchase. Appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.